Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I want to be going ahead and diving deep into a question. What was the race, or what did the Jewish people of the time of Moses in the land of Egypt, what race did they identify with? Were they more of a black-skinned race, or were they more of a fair white-toned race? And the question I want to go ahead and ask, and why I'm asking this to begin with, is because when I take a look at modern-day Israel, when I take a look at Benjamin Netanyahu, the president of Israel, and when I take a look at most Jewish people today, they do not depict anyone from the region of Africa or the Middle East or Asia. All of these regions are filled with dark-skinned individuals, especially someone who was living as a shepherd, like Moses, who is a shepherd in a land of a desert where the sun was out all day. It's very hard to believe that Moses was a white man. So I want to go ahead and take a look at what kind of historical images that we have, what kind of depictions that we have of the old people of Africa, the old people of the Middle East, and if the Jewish people fall under these depictions. Because today, when I go ahead and take a look at the Israeli population, they do not look like they belong to this region. They do not look like Semites. They do not look like they belong to the region where the Canaanites and these historic Hebrew figures have come from. And I'm really trying to question this and figure out, are the people who are living currently in the Middle East, in Israel, are they actual colonizers, or are they Jewish by blood, and do they belong in that land? So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this and see what we are into. The first thing I want to go ahead and look at are these older hieroglyphics. These hieroglyphics go ahead and show depictions and paintings and stories that are written as one image. And this is the different depictions and images and paintings that the ancient Egyptians had for their slaves. Now, we do know that the Jewish people were their slaves. They worked out in the fields, and they lived in Egypt for quite some time. So even if they weren't necessarily dark-skinned at the time, they would have become dark-skinned once they were taken as slaves into Egypt. These are the slaves of the old ancient Egypt, and these are the current-day Egyptians, the Egyptians that are living today. These Egyptians are very dark-skinned. They look very similar to the slave people, or even the Pharaoh and his people in the images and depictions of ancient Egypt. Even back then, from hieroglyphics, from our own textbooks and history books today, the current Egyptians that are living in Egypt today and the ancient Egyptians do match skin tone. Though the Jewish people do not match this skin tone, but did belong to this land for quite some time. Even moving up north a little bit into the Middle East, you do not see a big change in skin tone. Yes, you may see skin tones going from very dark to a much lighter, a more pale skin tone, but it's still quite tan. It is still quite dark. So I'm not quite sure how we end up getting someone that looks like Benjamin Netanyahu today, but this is how the slaves of Egypt and the Egyptians were depicted back then. So even in the old DreamWorks film, Moses and his people are depicted as these dark-skinned individuals. I'm trying to figure out what happened, especially because the Jewish people are very prominent in keeping their bloodline together and always having a Jewish mother or wife to be the host of their child, because as we know, the Jewish bloodline runs through the mother. So Jewish men specifically, when they want to go ahead and make sure that their children are Jewish and they continue this bloodline, they will go ahead and reproduce with a Jewish woman to make sure that the bloodline continues to run through that mother. Now, knowing Jewish people's lineage and knowing how important being Jewish is to Jewish people, and them keeping this bloodline and keeping it in the family, how did their genetics change so much? How did they change so rapidly? How did they become so pale and so European looking today? So to go ahead and figure out the diversity of Israel and see why there are so many different races of Jewish people within the state of Israel today who claim to be Jewish, let's go ahead and see what George Galloway has to say on DNA testing and why it is not allowed in Israel today.
Well, look, Lance, a religion cannot be native to any land. There are Chinese Jews. I've met them. There are Vietnamese Jews. I've met them. They're not native to the land of Palestine. There are African Jews. They're not native to the land of Palestine either. There are Ashkenazi Jews who are entirely European in their DNA. That's why you're not allowed to have a DNA test in Israel. because it will reveal that virtually none of them are Semitic, virtually none of them have any ancestral connection to the land. As a Roman Catholic, I have no right at all to the land of any other Roman Catholic anywhere in the world. Even to state that proposition demonstrates its complete absurdity. You can convert to Judaism. I'm wearing a hat. The reason I'm wearing a hat is because I was viciously assaulted. I was viciously assaulted by a manager in the BBC who had recently converted to Judaism. Now, it's fine. I love all religions. But you can't say I've now converted to Judaism and therefore I have a right to go to the land of Palestine and live in the house of someone whose ancestors have been living in it for thousands of years. Again, merely to state that truth is to demonstrate the absurdity of the propaganda to which you allude, to which you refer.
So what Galloway is saying here is there's no way to really test who's actually Jewish by DNA and who's not actually Jewish by DNA. Many of these people convert to the religion of Judaism, Europeans, Chinese people, Australians, and so forth, and they move to the land of Israel because they have this right to return to the land. This is God's given land to the Jewish people. These people are converts to the religion of Judaism. They are not born from the family of Jacob. They are not from Prophet Israel. They're not from the family of Abraham. These individuals are from all other different creeds and all other different sections of the world. Some of these people come from the Roman Empire. These are the individuals who crucified Jesus, meaning many of these so-called Jewish people or Semites who are living in Israel today, including Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, are from Northern Europe. These people are from the Roman Empire. Their ancestors are Roman. Their grandfathers are pagan and worshipped pagan idols. They worshipped statues. They made sacrifices and offerings, child sacrifices, human sacrifices, animal sacrifices. These individuals come from a line of Satanism. These individuals do not come from a line of a chosen lineage of God Almighty. These individuals do not come from the bloodline of our prophets. Peace and blessings be upon them. A lot of these individuals are just imposters, is what it seems like. And this is why DNA testing in Israel is illegal. This is why when we take a look at the Jewish people of the biblical times, the Jewish people who lived in Africa and lived in the Middle East during the time of David and Solomon, during the time of Moses, and during the time of these beautiful prophets, these individuals were dark-skinned. They were black. And why is it that the only race in the world, one of the oldest races in the world, is the only race that can become every other race? They can be black and white and Chinese and everything else, but they have zero identity to what they actually look like. Why is this? What happened to the Jewish identity? Where did it go? Who robbed it? And at what time did this happen? Because I'm really trying to figure this out. So did I answer my question? Why are the Jewish people of today extremely white and European looking, while the Jewish people of back then look straight up like they're from Africa? How can you call yourself Semitic if your DNA doesn't even lead you back to these Semitic lands? This is something that I have been questioning for the last couple of years, and I have been analyzing. And the more and more I look into this, and I see that DNA testing is illegal in Israel, that I see how many different races of Jewish people there are, though they do claim themselves to be a race, not necessarily a religion. It gets me thinking, are all these people that are currently living in Israel and identifying with the Jewish race, are they actually Jewish? Do they have a right to that land? And is what's happening today fair? Are the Jewish people and their history completely stolen and taken by an imposter from Europe? Or are the Jewish people today are what they say they are?